payphone cord stretched taut as Angela Hammond turned her back to the deserted street, laughing into the receiver. It was April 4th, 1991, 11:15 p.m., and the 20-year-old was parked outside a Food Barn grocery store in Clinton, Missouri, talking to her fiancé, Rob Schaefer, about their unborn baby. She was 4 months pregnant, glowing with that particular joy of expecting mothers, planning their wedding just 3 months away. Then her laughter stopped mid-sentence. "There's a really suspicious man driving around the parking lot," Angela whispered into the phone, her voice dropping to something Rob had never heard before. Primal fear wrapped in forced calm. Rob pressed the phone tighter to his ear, sitting up straighter in his home 15 miles away in Clinton. "What do you mean, suspicious?" "He's circling. He's been around 3 times now. He's in this older green pickup truck with a camper shell. Rob, he's staring at me." Angela's breathing had changed, quick and shallow. She wasn't laughing anymore. "Get in your car right now," Rob said, already grabbing his keys. "Lock the doors. I'm coming to get you." "Wait, he's stopping," Angela said. "He's parking on the other side of the lot. Maybe I'm just being paranoid." But she wasn't being paranoid. What happened in the next 8 minutes would become one of America's most haunting, unsolved mysteries. A case that would torment investigators for over 3 decades, destroy families, and leave more questions than answers scattered across the Midwest like broken glass. "He's getting out of the truck," Angela continued, her voice steadier now, trying to convince herself everything was fine. "He's going to the payphone next to the grocery store entrance. See? He's just making a call. I'm being silly." Rob wasn't convinced. Something in Angela's initial reaction had set off every alarm in his system. "Just stay on the line with me. Keep talking." They resumed their conversation about baby names and wedding flowers, but Angela kept glancing toward the man at the distant payphone. She could see him clearly under the parking lot lights. White male, somewhere between 25 and 35 years old, about 6 feet tall, maybe 180 pounds, with a stocky build. He wore a white t-shirt, dark pants, and a baseball cap pulled low. But it was his energy that bothered her, the way he seemed to be performing the act of using a phone rather than actually making a call. "Rob." "This is weird," Angela said suddenly. "He keeps looking over here. He's not even talking into the phone. He's just standing there with it against his ear, watching me." "Angela, get in your car now." Okay, I am. Wait, he's hanging up. He's walking back to his truck. It's fine. He's leaving." But he wasn't leaving. The green pickup truck's engine growled to life, and instead of exiting the parking lot, it began moving slowly across the asphalt toward Angela's position. The headlights cut through the darkness like the eyes of a predator that had spotted its prey. "Rob, he's coming over here," Angela said, and now the fear was undisguised, sharp and real. "He's driving right toward me." "Get in your car," Rob was shouting now, running for his own vehicle. "Hang up and get in your car." "I'm trying. But I need to hang up the phone first, the cord." And that's when everything exploded into chaos. Angela's scream pierced through the phone line like a knife. Not a movie scream, not dramatic or theatrical, but the raw, visceral sound of a human being confronting their worst nightmare made flesh. Rob heard her yell something that froze his blood. "No, get away from me." Then came sounds that would haunt Rob Schaefer for the rest of his life. A struggle, Angela fighting, her voice crying out in terror and desperation. The phone was still connected, still transmitting every horrifying second. He heard Angela screaming, "Somebody help me," into the empty parking lot. He heard the violence of it, the sounds of a predator and prey, of a young pregnant woman fighting for her life and the life of her unborn child. "Angela!" Rob screamed into the phone, completely helpless, 15 miles away and utterly powerless. "Angela!" The line went dead. Rob Schaefer would later say that the silence that followed was worse than the screaming. He stood there in his home, phone pressed against his ear, listening to nothing, his mind racing through every terrible possibility. Then instinct kicked in. He slammed down the phone, grabbed his keys, and ran for his car. His truck roared to life and he peeled out of his driveway, tires screaming against asphalt. 15 miles separated him from Angela. He pushed the accelerator to the floor, flying down Route 13 toward Clinton at speeds that would have gotten him arrested on any other night. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles went white. His mind kept replaying that scream, that terrible moment when her voice had cut off. He covered those 15 miles in what felt like both seconds and hours, his truck engines screaming in protest. The speedometer climbed past 80, past 90. He blew through stop signs in the empty night. Nothing mattered except getting to Angela. Nothing mattered except saving her and their baby. The food barn parking lot came into view, and Rob's heart, already racing, somehow accelerated even more. He could see Angela's car still parked there, the driver's door hanging open. The payphone receiver dangled from its cord, swaying slightly in the night breeze. But Angela was gone. Rob skidded into the parking lot and jumped out before his truck had fully stopped. "Angela!" he screamed into the emptiness. "Angela!" Nothing. The parking lot was empty except for Angela's abandoned car, its door open like a mouth frozen mid-scream. Rob ran to the payphone, wild-eyed, desperate. Maybe she'd run into the store. Maybe she was hiding somewhere. Maybe... That's when he saw it. As he spun around, scanning the area in growing panic, something caught his eye moving in the distance. Tail lights. A vehicle leaving town on Highway 7, heading north. Even from this distance, even in the darkness, Rob could make out the basic shape. A pickup truck with what looked like a camper shell. Every instinct in Rob's body screamed that Angela was in that vehicle. He sprinted back to his truck and gave chase. His foot slammed the accelerator to the floor. The engine roared. He was going to catch them. He had to catch them. Angela was in that truck. He was certain of it. And he was going to save her and bring her home. The gap between the vehicles began to close. Rob's truck was newer, faster. He could see the green pickup more clearly now, could make out the camper shell, could see it was indeed the vehicle Angela had described. His heart pounded with a mixture of terror and determination. He was catching up. Just a little closer and he could get the license plate number, could flag them down, could... And then his truck began to lose power. "No," Rob whispered. "No, no, 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 no." But the truck's engine was sputtering, coughing. The transmission was failing. In his desperate race to reach Angela, pushing the vehicle beyond its limits, something had given way. His speed dropped from 90 to 80 to 70. The green pickup ahead pulled further away, its taillights growing smaller in the distance. "Please," Rob begged, slamming his hand against the steering wheel. "Please, please, please." But mechanical sympathy wasn't going to save Angela Hammond. Rob's truck coasted to a stop on the side of Highway 7, the green pickup disappearing into the night, taking Angela and their unborn baby with it. Rob sat there in the driver's seat of his dead truck, and for a long moment he couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. Then he started screaming. A passing motorist found him there 20 minutes later, standing on the side of the highway in the darkness, tears streaming down his face, and called the police. By the time officers arrived on the scene, Angela Hammond had vanished into the American heartland as if she'd never existed at all. The Clinton Police Department responded within minutes of Rob's frantic report, but minutes were all the kidnapper needed. By the time officers secured the food barn parking lot and began processing the scene, Angela was already miles away, being carried further into the night with every passing second. The investigation that followed would become one of the most frustrating and heartbreaking cases in Missouri law enforcement history. Detective Neil Doney was the lead investigator assigned to the case, a veteran officer who'd seen his share of crimes in rural Missouri, but nothing quite like this. When he arrived at the food barn at 11:47 p.m., just 32 minutes after the abduction, he found a scene that was both evidence-rich and maddeningly incomplete. On Angela's 1987 Pontiac 6000 sat in the parking lot exactly where she'd parked it, driver's door open, keys still in the ignition, her purse on the front seat. The payphone receiver dangled from its cord, swaying in the slight breeze like a pendulum, marking the seconds of Angela's disappearance. There were no signs of blood, no obvious physical evidence, but the violence of what had happened hung in the air like smoke. Rob Schaefer was barely coherent, his emotional state somewhere between shock and complete breakdown. Donnie had to piece together Rob's account slowly, carefully, asking him to repeat details multiple times because Rob kept dissolving into tears or rage or both simultaneously. "She was right here," Rob kept saying, touching the payphone as if he could somehow reach back through time and save her. "I heard everything. Oh, I heard her screaming. I heard him take her." "Tell me about the truck," Doney said, his notepad already filling with details. "You said you saw it leaving." "Green pickup, older model with a camper shell. I chased it. I almost caught it." Rob's voice cracked. "My transmission went. If my truck hadn't broken down, I would have saved her. I was so close." Doney put a hand on Rob's shoulder. "You did everything you could. We're going to find her." But even as he said it, Doney felt the weight of those words. The first few hours after an abduction are critical, and those hours were already slipping away like water through fingers. He immediately called for roadblocks on all major highways leading out of Clinton, but the reality was stark. There were dozens of county roads, farm roads, and back routes a vehicle could take. The kidnapper could be anywhere within a 100-mile radius by now. The investigation expanded rapidly. Within hours, officers were canvassing every business in Clinton, looking for anyone who might have seen the green pickup truck or its driver. They interviewed the night staff at the food barn, but the store had closed at 11 p.m., 15 minutes before the abduction. The last employee to leave remembered seeing Angela's car in the parking lot, but noticed nothing unusual. By dawn, the story had spread through Clinton like wildfire. A pregnant woman, engaged to be married, snatched in broad view of the town's main shopping area. It was the kind of crime that shattered any illusion of safety in small-town America. Volunteers poured into the police station, offering to form search parties, to distribute flyers, to do anything that might help bring Angela home. Angela's mother, Kathy Schaefer, yes, coincidentally sharing the same last name as Rob, despite not being related, was destroyed by the news. She arrived at the police station at dawn, her face a mask of controlled panic, demanding answers that nobody could give her. "My daughter is 4 months pregnant," she told Detective Doney, her voice shaking. "She's planning her wedding. She has her whole life ahead of her. Who would do this? Why would anyone do this?" These were questions that would echo through the investigation for decades. The FBI joined the case on April 5th, bringing additional resources and expertise in abduction cases. Special agent in charge Richard Frazier established a command post in Clinton and began coordinating with local law enforcement. The investigation quickly became one of the largest missing persons cases in Missouri history. The first major break came from Angela's phone call with Rob. She'd given him a detailed description of the kidnapper and his vehicle while she watched him at the payphone, details that would become central to the investigation. White male, 25 to 35, about 6 feet tall, 180 pounds, stocky build, baseball cap, white t-shirt, dark pants. Driving a 1970s-era green pickup truck with a white or beige camper shell. But there was something else Angela had mentioned, a detail so specific that investigators immediately focused on it. During that phone call, while watching the man at the payphone across the parking lot, Angela had told Rob something crucial. "There's writing on the truck. Some kind of lettering on the side of the camper shell." "What did it say?" Doney asked Rob during one of their many interviews. Rob closed his eyes, trying to remember Angela's exact words. She said it looked like it said Gem or Jen or something like that. She wasn't sure because of the angle and the lighting. This detail, the lettering on the truck, became a focal point. Investigators compiled lists of every business, organization, and vehicle in a 200-mile radius that might match that description. They checked construction companies, utility vehicles, service trucks. They found several possibilities, but nothing that connected to a green pickup with a camper shell. The composite sketch of the suspect was released to the public on April 6th, based on Angela's description as relayed by Rob. The image showed a white male with angular features, wearing a baseball cap. It was distributed to every law enforcement agency in Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. Tips began pouring in immediately. Over the next few weeks, investigators followed up on hundreds of leads. A man matching the description was spotted at a gas station in Nevada, Missouri. Another sighting placed a similar vehicle in Kansas City. Each lead was pursued with desperate intensity, but each led nowhere. The green pickup truck and its driver seemed to have evaporated. What made the case even more perplexing was that Angela Hammond had no enemies. Everyone who knew her described her as kind, friendly, and well-liked. She worked at a local factory, lived quietly with her family, and was devoted to Rob and their upcoming baby. There was no jilted ex-boyfriend, no angry acquaintance, no one in her life who might want to harm her. "This appears to be a stranger abduction," Agent Frazier told the press at a news conference 1 week after Angela's disappearance. "We believe the suspect may have been specifically targeting women alone at night in public places. This may not have been his first attempt." That statement opened a new and terrifying avenue of investigation. Were there other victims? Other women who'd been approached, followed, or even attacked by this same predator? Investigators began looking at unsolved cases throughout the region, searching for patterns, and they found something that chilled them to the bone. Exactly 6 months before Angela Hammond's abduction on October 9th, 1990, a young woman named Trudy Darby had vanished under eerily similar circumstances from Max Creek, Missouri, just 30 miles from Clinton. Trudy was also young, just 19 years old. She'd been working the night shift at a convenience store when she seemingly vanished into thin air. Her car was found abandoned, keys in the ignition, purse inside. There were no signs of struggle, no witnesses, nothing. But there was one detail that made investigators' blood run cold. Shortly before Trudy Darby disappeared, a co-worker had mentioned seeing a suspicious vehicle circling the parking lot. An older pickup truck with a camper shell. Detective Doney sat in his office at 3 a.m, unable to sleep, comparing the files on Angela Hammond and Trudy Darby. The similarities were too significant to ignore. Both young women. Both small towns in rural Missouri. Both taken at night from public locations. Both cases involving a pickup truck with a camper shell. Both vanished without a trace. "We're looking at a serial predator," he told Agent Frazier the next morning. "This wasn't random. He's hunting." The realization transformed the investigation. If the same man had taken both Angela Hammond and Trudy Darby, then he was organized, patient, and incredibly dangerous. He was selecting victims carefully, stalking them, waiting for the perfect moment. And if he'd taken 2 women, there might be more. Investigators began reviewing every missing persons case in Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas from the previous 5 years. They were looking for a pattern, for other women who might have crossed paths with the man in the green pickup truck. What they found was sobering. Dozens of unsolved disappearances, any number of which could potentially be connected. But connections weren't enough. They needed evidence. They needed witnesses. Most of all, they needed to find Angela Hammond alive. As weeks turned into months, the investigation began to slow. The initial flood of tips had dwindled to a trickle. The massive search parties that had combed the woods and fields around Clinton found nothing. The roadblocks and checkpoints that had been set up throughout the region came up empty. Angela Hammond had simply vanished. For Rob Schaefer, every day was an exercise in sustained agony. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think about anything except Angela and their baby. He appeared at every press conference, made every appeal to the public. I followed up on every tip, no matter how unlikely. His parents were worried he was having a complete breakdown. "I should have gotten there faster," he told a reporter from the Kansas City Star in an interview 6 weeks after the abduction. His eyes were hollow, ringed with dark circles. He'd lost 20 pounds. "I heard her screaming. I heard her being taken, and I couldn't save her. If my truck hadn't broken down, I would have caught him. I was so close." The guilt was destroying him. Friends tried to tell him it wasn't his fault, that he'd done everything humanly possible, but Rob couldn't accept that. In his mind, he'd failed Angela when she needed him most. The fact that his truck's mechanical failure might have saved his own life, that he might have been killed if he'd caught up to a desperate kidnapper, never seemed to occur to him. Angela's mother, Kathy, became the public face of the search effort. She appeared on local news programs, national shows, anywhere that might generate publicity for the case. She organized vigils, fundraisers, awareness campaigns. She plastered Angela's smiling face on flyers throughout the Midwest. She refused to give up hope that her daughter would come home. "Angela is out there somewhere," she told a crowd of supporters at a vigil in Clinton's town square 3 months after the abduction. She's waiting for us to find her. She's waiting to come home and have her baby and get married and live her life. And we're going to find her. I promise you. We're going to bring her home." But as the summer of 1991 stretched on with no breaks in the case, that promise began to feel increasingly hollow. Detective Doney and Agent Frazier had pursued every lead, interviewed hundreds of people, checked thousands of vehicles, but they were no closer to finding Angela than they'd been on the night she disappeared. The man in the green pickup truck had vanished as completely as his victim. Then, in August 1991, 4 months after Angela's abduction, something happened that reignited hope in the case, but also deepened its mystery. A woman named Cheryl Kenny came forward with a story that made investigators reassess everything they thought they knew. Cheryl explained that on the night of April 4th, 1991, the same night Angela Hammond was kidnapped, she'd been driving on Highway 13 between Clinton and Montrose when she'd witnessed something strange. "I saw a pickup truck pulled over on the side of the road," Cheryl told Detective Doney. "It was one of those older trucks with a camper shell. There was a man standing outside the truck, and he was dragging something or someone from the bed of the truck to the cab." Doney's pulse quickened. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" Cheryl looked ashamed. "I didn't know about the kidnapping until weeks later. I don't watch the news much, and I didn't put it together until my neighbor showed me a flyer with Angela's picture. That's when I realized what I might have seen." "Can you describe the man?" "Not really. It was dark and I was driving past, but the truck matched the description I saw on the flyer. Green, older model with a light-colored camper shell." "What time was this?" "Around 11:30, maybe 11:45. I remember because I just left my sister's house and I always leave around 11:30. The timeline fit perfectly. Angela was abducted around 11:15 p.m. from Clinton. By 11:40 p.m., Rob had chased the green pickup truck north on Highway 7, but Highway 13 ran east-west, connecting to Highway 7 about 10 miles out of town. If the kidnapper had taken Highway 7 north and then turned onto Highway 13, Cheryl Kenny could have seen him moving Angela from the exposed truck bed into the cab, either because Angela had been fighting or because he needed to secure her better for a longer journey. This sighting suggested something crucial. The kidnapper was traveling with purpose, heading somewhere specific. He wasn't just driving randomly. He had a destination in mind. Investigators plotted the routes on a map. If the kidnapper had taken Highway 7 north from Clinton, then turned east on Highway 13, where was he going? What lay in that direction? The answer was sobering. In that direction, stretching out for hundreds of miles, was vast rural farmland, countless small towns, and endless places where a person could be hidden. The kidnapper could have been taking Angela to a rural property, an abandoned building, a remote location where he could do whatever he planned to do without interruption. Search teams intensified their efforts in the areas east of Clinton, but the territory was simply too vast. They were looking for a needle in a haystack the size of several counties. Meanwhile, another piece of the puzzle emerged that added yet another layer of mystery to an already confusing case. Investigators received a tip from a woman named Sandra, who'd been at the same food barn parking lot earlier that evening, around 9 p.m., 2 hours before Angela arrived. "There was a man sitting in a truck in the parking lot," Sandra told police. "He was just sitting there, watching people. I thought it was weird, so I left and parked somewhere else to make my phone call." Can you describe the truck? It was a pickup truck. I think it was green or dark-colored, and I'm pretty sure it had a camper shell. The implications were staggering. If this was the same man, and the description certainly suggested it was, then he hadn't just happened upon Angela by chance. He'd been at that parking lot for hours, watching, waiting. But waiting for what? For Angela specifically, or for any young woman who happened to show up alone? This suggested a level of premeditation that was absolutely chilling. The kidnapper had staked out the location, had patience, had a plan. He'd watched Sandra, decided she wasn't the right victim for whatever reason, and waited for someone else. When Angela arrived alone and vulnerable, talking on the payphone with her back turned, she became the target. Detective Doney began to develop a profile of their suspect. This was someone who was organized and methodical. He scouted locations. He waited for the right opportunity. He approached victims under the pretense of normalcy, using a nearby payphone to appear non-threatening, then struck when the moment was right. The camper shell on his truck wasn't just for storage. It was a mobile prison cell, a place where he could transport victims without being seen. "We're looking for someone who's done this before," Doney told his team at a briefing. This level of sophistication doesn't happen on a first attempt. If he took Angela Hammond and Trudy Darby, there are probably others. We need to expand our search to surrounding states. The investigation went regional. Requests for information were sent to law enforcement agencies across the Midwest. Were there other missing women? Other unsolved abductions? Other sightings of a green pickup truck with a camper shell? The responses that came back were both helpful and overwhelming. Yes, there were other missing women, hundreds of them. And yes, there were sightings of trucks matching the description. But connecting any of them definitively to Angela's case proved impossible. Older pickup trucks with camper shells were incredibly common in rural America in 1991. Without a license plate number or more specific identifying information, they were chasing shadows. As 1991 turned into 1992 and then 1993, the case began to go cold. Not for lack of effort, Detective Doney and Agent Fraser continued to pursue every lead that came in, but because there were simply no new breaks. The man in the green pickup truck had executed what appeared to be the perfect crime. For Rob Schaefer, time didn't heal anything. He never married. He couldn't bring himself to be with anyone else. Angela was still out there somewhere, he insisted, and he was still engaged to her. Their baby, boy or girl, they'd never learned the gender, would have been born in October 1991. Rob marked that month with private grief. Mourning a child who'd never gotten the chance to be born, Kathy Schaefer, Angela's mother, became an advocate for missing persons cases throughout Missouri. She worked with other families who'd lost loved ones, organized searches, pushed for better police coordination across jurisdictions. Her grief had transformed into fierce determination. If she couldn't save Angela, she'd help save someone else's daughter. Years passed. The case remained officially open but inactive. Detective Doney retired in 2003, but he never forgot Angela Hammond. He kept a file on the case at his home, still hoping that somehow, someday, there would be a break. That break finally came in 2008, 17 years after Angela's disappearance, from the most unexpected source imaginable. A prisoner named Michael Wayne Devlin had been arrested in January 2007 in a case that shocked the nation. Devlin had kidnapped two boys, Sean Hornbeck and Ben Ownby, in Missouri and held them captive. When police raided his apartment, they found Sean alive, having been held for over 4 years. The case generated massive media coverage and led to a comprehensive review of all unsolved abduction cases in Missouri. During that review, a FBI cold case analyst named Jennifer Thompson noticed something. Devlin's known movements in the late 1980s and early 1990s placed him in central Missouri. He'd worked as a delivery driver, traveling throughout the region. And in 1991, he'd been 26 years old, right in the age range of Angela Hammond's suspected kidnapper. More significantly, Devlin owned multiple vehicles over the years, including pickup trucks. Thompson requested a complete vehicle history on Devlin and found something that made her hands shake. In 1990, Michael Devlin had owned a 1977 GMC pickup truck. It had been green, and according to registration records, it had a camper shell. Thompson immediately contacted the FBI field office in Kansas City. Within days, investigators were interviewing Devlin in prison, showing him photos of Angela Hammond, asking about his whereabouts on April 4th, 1991. Devlin's response was chilling in its simplicity. He smiled and said nothing. His lawyer advised him not to answer any questions about unsolved cases. Without direct evidence connecting him to Angela's abduction, prosecutors couldn't charge him, and the truck he'd owned in 1990 to 1991 had been sold years ago and was now untraceable, likely scrapped for parts decades earlier. But the FBI wasn't done. They conducted a comprehensive investigation into Devlin's background, looking for any connection to Clinton, Missouri, or the food barn parking lot. They interviewed his former employers, his acquaintances, anyone who might have information about his movements in April 1991. What they found was frustrating. Yes, Devlin's job as a delivery driver could have taken him through Clinton. Yes, he'd been in the area during the time frame. Yes, he owned a truck that matched the description. But there was no definitive proof. No witness who could place him at the food barn that night. No physical evidence linking him to Angela's disappearance. Detective Doney, pulled out of retirement to consult on this new angle, reviewed everything they had. It could be him, he admitted to Agent Thompson. Everything circumstantial points in that direction, but we'd never get a conviction with what we have. We need more. They never got more. Devlin was eventually convicted of the kidnappings of Sean Hornbeck and Ben Ownby and sentenced to life in prison without parole. He's never confessed to any other crimes. He's never mentioned Angela Hammond, and without a confession or physical evidence, the case against him remains purely theoretical. But the Devlin connection reignited public interest in Angela's case. News outlets ran retrospectives. True crime podcasts devoted episodes to the mystery. A new generation of amateur sleuths began analyzing the case, posting theories online, trying to crack the mystery that had stumped professional investigators for decades. Some theories focused on Devlin. Others suggested different suspects, other convicted predators who'd been active in Missouri in 1991, transient workers, truck drivers passing through the area. One popular theory suggested Angela had been taken across state lines into Kansas or Oklahoma, which would explain why searches in Missouri had turned up nothing. A more disturbing theory suggested by some investigators was that Angela had been murdered shortly after the abduction and her body disposed of in one of the many lakes, rivers, or remote wooded areas in the region. Central Missouri has countless rural locations where a body might never be found. Old wells, abandoned mine shafts, dense forests, deep lakes. But Kathy Schaefer refused to accept that her daughter was dead. "Until I see proof otherwise, Angela is alive," she told a reporter from the Clinton Daily Democrat in 2015, on the 24th anniversary of the abduction. At 73 years old, her determination hadn't wavered. "She's out there. She's waiting to come home." Rob Schaefer, now in his 50s, was less optimistic. "I think about that night every single day," he said in the same interview. "I hear her screaming every time I close my eyes. I should have gotten there faster. I should have saved her." The guilt had never left him. Friends say he became a shell of the man he'd once been, that the trauma of that night had fundamentally broken something in him that never healed. In 2019, advances in DNA technology led to a renewed push on the case. The FBI offered to re-examine any physical evidence from the food barn parking lot using modern forensic techniques that hadn't existed in 1991. But the sad reality was that there was almost no physical evidence to examine. No blood, no hair, no fibers, nothing that could yield DNA. The kidnapper had left nothing behind except a dangling phone receiver and a lifetime of questions. The case of Angela Hammond remains officially unsolved as of 2025. The Clinton Police Department still maintains an active file. The FBI still lists her as a missing person. Her face still appears on missing persons databases across the country. Somewhere in America, or there are people who know what happened to Angela Hammond on that April night in 1991. At minimum, the man who took her knows. But that information has never come to light. The green pickup truck with the camper shell and the mysterious lettering on the side was never found. The man who drove it was never identified with certainty, and Angela Hammond, 4 months pregnant and planning her wedding, never came home. What makes this case particularly haunting isn't just the violence of the abduction or the mystery of what happened afterward. It's the agonizing proximity to resolution that never came. Rob was on the phone when it happened, hearing everything. He chased the kidnapper's vehicle and nearly caught up. Cheryl Kenny saw the truck on the highway shortly after. There were witnesses, evidence, descriptions. Everything suggested this case would be solved quickly. But it wasn't. And that's perhaps the most terrifying aspect of Angela Hammond's disappearance. It demonstrates how, even with witnesses, even with a detailed description of the suspect and vehicle, even with a massive investigation by local and federal authorities, someone can still simply vanish. The food barn where Angela made her last phone call is long gone now, demolished and replaced by a different store. But old-timers in Clinton remember what happened there. They remember the vigils, the searches, the hope that gradually transformed into resignation. Parents in Clinton used Angela's case as a cautionary tale for their children. Never go anywhere alone at night. Always be aware of your surroundings. Trust your instincts if something feels wrong. Angela had trusted her instincts that night. She'd noticed the suspicious man immediately, had described him to Rob, had recognized the danger. But even knowing there was a threat wasn't enough to save her. The predator had simply been faster, closer, more prepared. In 2021, on the 30th anniversary of Angela's abduction, the Clinton Police Department held a press conference appealing once again for information. Detective Sarah Martinez, who'd inherited the case files, stood at a podium with Angela's picture displayed behind her. Someone out there knows what happened to Angela Hammond, Martinez said, her voice firm with conviction. Someone saw something that night or in the days that followed. Someone has information that could bring closure to this family. It's been 30 years. Circumstances change. People who were afraid to talk in 1991 might not be afraid anymore. If you know anything at all, please come forward. Help us bring Angela home. The press conference generated a handful of new tips, but nothing that moved the investigation forward. The green pickup truck remained a ghost, its driver a phantom who'd struck once and disappeared into the American landscape. As this story concludes, it's important to remember that Angela Hammond wasn't just a mystery or a true crime case. She was a real person. She loved music and movies. She was excited about becoming a mother. She was planning a wedding. She had dreams and hopes and a future that stretched out before her like an open road. All of that was stolen in 8 minutes on a warm April night. Rob Schaefer still lives in Clinton, Missouri. He's 62 years old now. He never married, never had other children. The family he was supposed to have with Angela exists only in his imagination, in the life that should have been but never was. He keeps her photo on his mantle, alongside a sonogram picture from her 4-month checkup, the only image that exists of their child. Kathy Schaefer passed away in 2023 at the age of 81, never learning what happened to her daughter. In her final years, she'd established a foundation that provides support to families of missing persons, turning her grief into something that helped others. She went to her grave believing Angela was still alive somewhere, still waiting to come home. The case remains open. If you have any information about the disappearance of Angela Hammond, please contact the Clinton Police Department or the FBI's Kansas City field office. Even the smallest detail might be the piece that finally solves this mystery. What happened to Angela Hammond is the question that has haunted investigators, family, and true crime enthusiasts for over 3 decades. Where is she now? Was she murdered that night, or did she survive for days, weeks, months after her abduction? Is her body hidden somewhere in the vast Missouri countryside, waiting to be discovered? Or, in the scenario her mother clung to until her death, is she somehow still alive, held captive all these years, waiting for rescue? The truth is that without the kidnapper coming forward or physical evidence being discovered, we may never know. And that uncertainty is its own special kind of torture for everyone who loved Angela Hammond. But there's one more angle to this case that deserves examination. One final twist that makes the mystery even more complex and disturbing. In 2017, a woman named Lisa came forward with a story that sent shockwaves through the investigation. Lisa had been a teenager in 1991, living in a small town about 50 miles from Clinton. She'd never reported what she witnessed because, she claimed, she'd been too terrified and her family had discouraged her from getting involved. Lisa told investigators that on a night in early April 1991, she couldn't remember the exact date, she'd been at a truck stop off Interstate 35 with her boyfriend when she saw something that had haunted her for 26 years. There was this older green pickup truck at the gas pumps, Lisa recalled, sitting across from Detective Martinez in an interview room. Her hands shook as she spoke. It had a camper shell on the back. I noticed it because the guy driving it seemed really nervous, really agitated. He kept looking around while he pumped gas like he was worried about being watched. Martinez leaned forward. Can you describe him? White guy, maybe 30s, stocky build. He was wearing a baseball cap. But that's not what stuck with me. Lisa paused, her voice dropping. While he was pumping gas, I heard something from the back of the truck, from inside the camper shell. It sounded like someone hitting the side of it, like banging. And I swear I heard a woman's voice, muffled, like she was yelling, but something was covering her mouth. What did you do? I told my boyfriend. He said it was probably just equipment shifting around in the truck, that I was being paranoid. But I knew what I heard. That was a person in there. See, that was someone calling for help. Tears rolled down Lisa's face. I should have called the police, I should have done something, but I was 16 and scared, and my boyfriend convinced me I was overreacting. Did you see where the truck went? It pulled out and headed north on I-35. That's the last I saw of it. Martinez pulled out a map. If this was Angela Hammond in that truck, the timeline is tight but possible. Clinton is about 40 miles from that truck stop. If he took her around 11:15 p.m. and drove at normal speeds, he could have reached that truck stop by midnight, maybe 12:30 a.m. Lisa, do you remember what time this was? Lisa closed her eyes, thinking. It was late, after midnight, I think. Maybe 12:30 or 1 in the morning. We'd been out late because it was a Friday night and my parents thought I was sleeping over at a friend's house. The dates checked out. April 4th, 1991 was a Thursday night going into Friday morning. Lisa's sighting could absolutely have been Angela Hammond, trapped in the camper shell, trying desperately to signal for help while her kidnapper refueled for whatever journey he had planned. But there was a problem with Lisa's account, the same problem that had plagued this entire investigation. She'd waited 26 years to come forward. Her memory of the details was fuzzy. She couldn't remember which specific truck stop it was, though she thought it was somewhere between Kansas City and Emporia, Kansas. She had no documentation, no proof. Nothing but a decades-old memory that she readily admitted might be distorted by time and guilt. Still, her account fit with other evidence. If the kidnapper had taken Highway 7 north from Clinton, then Highway 13 east, as Cheryl Kenny had witnessed, he could have connected to Interstate 35 within an hour. From there, the highway stretched north into Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa. Endless possibilities for where he might have taken Angela. Investigators requested surveillance footage from every truck stop along I-35 between Kansas City and Emporia, Kansas from April 5th, 1991. But of course, that footage hadn't been preserved. In 1991, security cameras were far less common than today, and any footage that did exist had been recorded over or discarded decades ago. See, Lisa's account remained another frustrating maybe in a case built on maybes and what-ifs. The psychological toll of Angela Hammond's disappearance extended far beyond her immediate family. It affected an entire community, shattering the sense of security that small-town residents had taken for granted. After Angela's abduction, women in Clinton became hyper-vigilant. They stopped going out alone at night. They looked over their shoulders in parking lots. They taught their daughters to be constantly aware, constantly suspicious. Dr. Rebecca Chen, a forensic psychologist who has studied the Angela Hammond case extensively, explains the broader impact. This type of stranger abduction, particularly one where the victim's partner actually heard the attack happening in real time, creates a specific kind of community trauma. It demonstrates that danger can come from nowhere, that you can do everything right. Angela noticed the suspicious man. She reported it to her boyfriend. She tried to get to safety, and still become a victim. That realization is psychologically devastating. The case also highlighted significant gaps in law enforcement coordination in 1991. While the Clinton Police Department, Missouri Highway Patrol, and FBI worked together admirably, there was no comprehensive database for tracking similar crimes across jurisdictions. If the same predator had committed crimes in multiple states, connecting those dots in 1991 was nearly impossible without physical evidence or witness identification. This has changed significantly since Angela's disappearance. Her case, along with others like it, helped drive the development of better information sharing systems between law enforcement agencies. The National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, NAMUS, was established partly in response to cases like Angela's, providing a centralized database that makes it easier to identify patterns and connect cases across jurisdictions. But these improvements came too late to help Angela Hammond. One of the most persistent questions in this case is, why Angela? Was she specifically targeted, or was she simply in the wrong place at the wrong time? The evidence suggests the latter, that the kidnapper was hunting opportunistically, waiting at the food barn parking lot for any vulnerable victim who presented themselves. But some investigators have wondered if there was more to it. Angela was noticeably pregnant at 4 months, and some predators are specifically drawn to pregnant women, viewing them as more vulnerable or fulfilling some twisted fantasy. Could Angela's pregnancy have been what made her a target? Former FBI profiler Robert Davidson, who reviewed the case in 2012, offered this analysis. The suspect in this case demonstrates characteristics of an organized predator. He selected a location with low traffic at night, but enough general activity to not draw suspicion. He used the pretense of making a phone call to establish himself as non-threatening before approaching the victim. He had a vehicle specifically equipped to transport and conceal a victim. This isn't someone acting on sudden impulse. This is someone who planned and prepared. Davidson continued, "What we can't determine is whether he was selecting victims based on specific characteristics or simply taking targets of opportunity. The fact that he waited at the location for potentially hours suggests he might have been waiting for someone specific, either Angela Hammond herself, if he'd been stalking her previously, or someone matching a particular profile. The possibility that Angela had been stalked before her abduction has never been definitively ruled out. Investigators interviewed her co-workers, friends, and family extensively, asking if she'd noticed anyone following her, any unwanted attention, any strange vehicles near her home or workplace. No one remembered anything unusual. But the reality is that skilled stalkers often go unnoticed, and in 1991, public awareness of stalking behavior was far less developed than it is today. There's another dimension to this case that deserves attention: the technological limitations of 1991. Today, Angela's abduction would unfold very differently. The food barn parking lot would almost certainly have multiple security cameras covering every angle. Angela's cell phone would provide GPS coordinates, showing her exact location throughout the evening. Traffic cameras along highways would track the green pickup truck's movements. Automatic license plate readers would log every vehicle passing through Clinton. In 1991, none of these technologies existed or were widely deployed. The kidnapper operated in a world where surveillance was minimal, where tracking someone's movements required physical pursuit, where a vehicle could disappear into the rural landscape without leaving any digital trail whatsoever. This technological gap is why so many cases from the 1980s and 1990s remain unsolved. The criminals of that era operated in a brief window after forensic science had become sophisticated enough to require careful evidence avoidance, but before digital technology made true anonymity nearly impossible. The man who took Angela Hammond knew how to exploit that window. He left no physical evidence. He chose a location without cameras. He struck at night when witnesses were scarce. He used a vehicle common enough to avoid standing out, but equipped it specifically for his purposes. And then he vanished into rural America, where millions of acres of farmland and forest could hide countless secrets. As we approach the 34-year anniversary of Angela Hammond's disappearance, the case stands as a testament to both how far criminal investigation has come and how many questions remain from that earlier era. Modern DNA analysis, digital forensics, and improved investigative techniques would likely solve this case quickly if it happened today. But in 1991, even with witnesses and descriptions, even with a massive investigation, a predator could still make a young woman disappear as if she'd never existed. Detective Sarah Martinez, who continues to work the case, still receives tips occasionally. Most lead nowhere. A similar vehicle spotted in another state, a man who resembles the composite sketch, someone who knew someone who said something suspicious years ago. Martinez follows up on every single one, no matter how unlikely, because somewhere in that haystack of false leads might be the one true needle that solves the case. "I think about Angela every day," Martinez said in a recent interview. "I look at her picture on my desk, this beautiful young woman with her whole life ahead of her, and I think about the family that never got answers. I think about Rob Schaefer, who has spent more than half his life haunted by 8 minutes on a phone call. I think about her mother, who died without ever knowing what happened to her daughter. And I think about that baby who never got to be born. This case isn't just about solving a crime. It's about giving peace to people who have suffered for decades. But peace may never come. The reality is that some crimes remain forever unsolved, some questions forever unanswered. The man who drove that green pickup truck is likely dead by now. The passage of 34 years makes that probable. If he was 30 years old in 1991, he'd be 64 now. If he died without confessing, if he took his secrets to the grave, if he destroyed all evidence and left no trail, then the truth about what happened to Angela Hammond may be lost forever. Unless you know something. That's the appeal that law enforcement continues to make, year after year. Somewhere out there, someone knows something. Maybe you saw a green pickup truck with unusual lettering being abandoned or sold shortly after April 1991. Maybe you knew someone whose behavior changed dramatically around that time. Maybe you heard a confession or a suspicious comment that didn't make sense then, but does now. Maybe you are the person who took Angela Hammond, and the weight of that secret has become unbearable after all these years. If you know anything at all, about what happened to Angela Hammond on April 4th, 1991, please come forward. Contact the Clinton Police Department at 608-855561 or call the FBI's Kansas City office at 816-5128-200. You can remain anonymous. You can call from anywhere. But please, if you have information, share it. Help bring closure to a family that has waited 34 years for answers. Help solve one of America's most haunting mysteries. Angela Hammond was 20 years old when she was taken. She'd be 54 now. Her baby, if he or she had survived, would be 33 years old. Rob Schaefer is 62, still living in Clinton, still carrying the weight of that night. Angela's father passed away in 2019. Her mother died in 2023. The circle of people who knew and loved Angela is shrinking with each passing year. Time is running out for justice. Time is running out for answers. Time is running out for Angela Hammond. But it's not too late. It's never too late to do the right thing, to tell the truth, to help solve a mystery that has haunted a community for more than 3 decades. The green pickup truck with the camper shell and the mysterious lettering drove away from that food barn parking lot on April 4th, 1991, and disappeared into the night. But vehicles don't vanish forever. Evidence doesn't disappear completely. Secrets have a way of coming to light, even decades later. Someone, somewhere, knows what happened to Angela Hammond. And until that person comes forward, until that final piece of the puzzle falls into place, this case will remain one of America's most terrifying unsolved mysteries. A stark reminder that evil can strike anywhere, any time, and that even in small-town America, there are predators who hunt in the darkness. If this story has moved you, if you want to help keep Angela Hammond's memory alive and support efforts to solve cold cases like hers, please consider subscribing to this channel, leaving a comment with your thoughts on this case, and liking this video to help it reach more people. Every share, every comment, every bit of attention this case receives increases the chance that someone with information will come forward. You never know. You might be the person who helps crack this case wide open by sharing it with exactly the right person who has the answers we've been seeking for 34 years. Angela Hammond deserves justice. Her family deserves answers. And somewhere in America, someone has the information that could finally bring this decades-long nightmare to an end. Don't let Angela be forgotten. Share her story. Keep her memory alive. And if you know anything at all, please, please come forward. The phone receiver that Angela dropped that night has long since been replaced. The food barn where she made her last call is gone. But the echo of her scream, transmitted through a phone line to the man who loved her, still resonates across the decades. A cry for help that has never been answered, a mystery that has never been solved, and a question that still demands resolution. What happened to Angela Hammond?